Okay. All right. So you have your PDF sitting here that you exported from InDesign. So you're going to go in, you're going to right click, and you're going to open with Photoshop. If you don't have the right click or it's taking too long, you can also just click the file and drag and drop on top of the Photoshop icon. Then it's going to pull up this dialog box. You have your one side and your second side, right? So if you want to select both of them and open them together, you would just simply hold Shift and select both. Now, where you want to crop to is you want to crop to the bounding box. If you hit trim box or art box, it will actually ignore your trim marks. All right, so you definitely want to make sure you have those in the document. Um, the resolution, so this here isn't for print, it's for screen viewing only. So you can, set it to 150. It's even fine if you drop it all the way down to 72. I personally set most things to 150, so this way, if it needs to be a little bit bigger than what the finished size should be, it's not going to become pixelated. All right, but that's your preference. The other thing you want to take note of is the size of your document itself. All right, so basically 17 and a quarter by 11 and a half. So you're going to hit OK, and it will open up your two files. Anything that didn't have a color background is going to be transparent, right? Because there is no paper background to it yet. So the other thing you want to do first is create the actual file that you'll be creating this three-dimensional mockup on. So come up here, go to New, and then right here, I'm going to keep it at 150. I go to inches. It was 17.25 by 11 and a half, I think it was. Keep it RGB, and then hit create. So now I can separate this out, and I have these two panels open side by side. This is another issue where if you do not turn off your application frame, this is not going to be a possible solution for you. So you definitely want to turn off application frames so your windows can become independent to one another. Okay, so to start, you have to first flatten everything. So you go to layer, go down to flatten image, and then do the same for this one. Okay. Now what you want to do is you want to set up your document to make all the different selections. So zoom into the corners, and what I do is I will use my, let me pull this in, I'll use my marquee selection tool, and I will drag right up against that trim mark, and then I will pull down a guide, and then do the same for this. And then as well as each one of your fold marks. All right, and then there's one more here. And then the only other one that's left is the top part that will be cut off, which will be the top of this. Okay, so now you can see my guides have broken up into my 4 different panels. All right, then I'm going to do the same for this one here. All right, and then last one. Okay, So now I can select parts of these panels and drag them in and build the actual three-dimensional piece. All right. All right, so what I want to show first is how it will look as if the entire thing is open. I think that would be a good thing to show as like a first step. All right, so the other thing you want to do is to delete and remove anything that you have a die cut. All right, so if you have a shape that has a dark contrast, you might be able to use your magic wand to make a selection. This here is not going to do it. This is too light of a color, right? So you really need more of a contrast if you're gonna, do the quick way of, removing this. Because we flattened everything, we now need to unflatten it. So let me pull out my layer tab, and you can see the background is here with a lock. I'm going to right click and hit layer from background and hit OK. So now this way, when I make a selection over here, throw this out of the way, I want to, that's not what I want. I want to add another guide so I know exactly what size I need to make this. The other thing you could do too is to draw a perfect circle using the shape tool, and then you'll be able to adjust it. All right, so I'll show you that option too. All right, so now I can, and then hit delete. So now you can see that is completely removed, and then you can even, this, I'll be honest, this won't even be shown, but you can come in here and make a delete to that as well. All right. The other thing you could have done if you didn't want to draw in these boxes to get that circle is you could draw using the ellipse tool for the shape. You can draw a perfect circle. I want this to be fill, but different color. And then I can move it around. And I'd be able to then hit Command T and make the adjustments. And then once I have that selected perfectly, you have that sitting there. You can then, let me bring this back in. You can then hold on to Option Command and then click on that ellipse, and it would make a selection of it, and you end up deleting it. All right. So both of them are going to give you the exact same thing, just two different ways of achieving it. Okay. Now, stop bringing this in. You're going to, one at a time, pull individual panels into the other document. So I'm going to start with the two inside pieces first. So you make a selection of it, and then you would pull that in. Now, if you're going to have a lot of white in your design, you also have a white background. That's not really going to give you any help whatsoever. So you need to have some sort of color in the background itself. Why can't I pull this out from? Let me pull this in. Okay, so I'm going to make a selection. I'm going to grab a different color, and then I'm going to fill it. Okay, so now when I pull this in, you can see the difference in the white background as far as the dark background. Okay, now I bring in the next one. So I will click here and drag down to this one. And I will line it up right to the edge. Okay, then I will do the right one. Just do it there for now, and then do the left one. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to have this kind of angled down, that angled down, then that angled back. So that way it shows how this would actually roll into one another. So right now I'm kind of at the max of the size of the screen. So I'm going to select, I'm just going to leave this here for now. So it's always out. I'm going to select everything and then hit Command T and just shrink everything down just a little bit. All right. All right. So I'm going to start with this back piece here. I'm going to hit Command T. And then once you hit Command T, you can see you have your bounding box that is very familiar to you with Illustrator. All right. If you go to the corners or the top or the sides, you can see that affects the size proportions, right? If you go to the corners, it skews down like so. If you hold Command, you can see my cursor turns into a white arrow. That means it's only going to affect that corner. So if I click this and pull, you can see how it gets skewed out. If I click here and move down, you can see now I'm adding just a little bit of shape to this. And then I can click here and move it up slightly. So now I'm kind of giving it a little bit of depth, showing that it's coming out at you and it's going backwards. All right. You could also go to Edit, Transform, and go to Perspective, and then just change this down slightly, and you can see how it kind of pulls in the bottom. Then you can hit Command T again, so then you can then make that adjustment for the width of the size that you want and make any other adjustments. You do always want to try and go inward when you want to make changes. You don't want to pull out and make bigger, because then this would become pixelated because you're making it bigger than where you started. But you can go smaller and it will not become pixelated. All right. So once you have this the way that you want, you then hit return. And then now it's all about matching up with those angles with the other pieces. So now I'm going to go to this next one here, and I'm going to pull in there, and I'll make that smaller, like so. And then this one here, because I want it to be as if it's coming out a bit more, just not as much. And then the last one, I can make it go in a bit that way. All right, you can even, this looks weird. Maybe I'll just pull this one up. All right, so then you kind of showing how this gets all folded up and then comes into each other. So the other part is you want to add, that still looks really strange to me. You want to add shadows and highlights. So with anything that's white, obviously if you try and put a highlight on it, it's always going to look a little strange. But you definitely add some shadows, when you can. So there would definitely be a shadow coming in from here outward. So I would click on the layer that I want to add the shadow to, add a new layer on top of it, and then go to my gradient tool. And then I want to have this be black, and I want that to stay nothing. All right, so the opacity goes to nothing here. I hit OK, and then I add in a thick shadow that covers the whole thing. And then once I add a mask to it, so you click, right click and hit create clipping mask. And now that sits within the shape of this layer. So now I hit 2 or 3, trying to figure out what the proper opacity, transparency should be. I probably also would get rid of the shadow in here. I wouldn't have it go beyond this, because really, if the light source is coming in from the right, it would only be hitting here and coming out this way. If you want to add a highlight, let's say we're going to add a highlight to this layer, then you can do the opposite. So now I'm going to go into this, click this, and then now I'm going to go like so, right click, clipping mask, and then play around with the opacity to get a little bit more of a highlight rather than having a shadow. All right. All right, so once you have all this, I'll be honest, I still think this looks a little strange, but for a tutorial, I think that's what it's going to be. All right, so now let's say I wanted to have a different way of this actually being closer to being closed. So I only want this and this one to be copied over. And then I want the cover to kind of come over, and I want the other piece to come over that. So now I got to go into my other file here, and I want to pull in this piece. And then I'm going to use this as a guide for how high it needs to be. So that would sit here. All right, so we have this, and then I have, yeah, this sits right in the front of there. So it sits there. All right, so at least now I'm starting to show what this will actually look like once it gets all closed into, this folds in, and then that folds in, and then this is the cover that closes in. All right, so then now, you go through the same techniques. You can then add shadows. So you could just change the darkness of one. So let me show you an example over here. So let's say we get rid of this highlight, and I have the light source still coming from the right hand side. All I really would do now is on this one, go into adjustments with the brightness, and changing just the brightness will show that contrast from this to this. All right, so that's another way that you can then just kind of show that corner as the paper is folding. All right, where is this one? Right there. So then here, so now you can see just kind of playing around with the brightness and contrast adjustments. You wouldn't even need to bring in any kind of shadowing or highlight. So that's another option too. All right. So this is how you would create the actual mock-up. Now, once you're done, you can save this as a Photoshop file. So this way you can go back into it and make changes if you need to. So we'll do that first. And hit save. And then now, remember, you have to have the 4 different documents in your final PDF. You have to have, your 2 individual prints as 2 separate pages. Then you have to have one that is the mood board research, and also answering those 3 questions that we went over in class. And then now you're going to have this. So go up to layer, flatten it. All right, so now you have nothing, no other layers in there. It's just a background. Then go to save as, and save it as a Photoshop PDF. And then hit save. And then hit save. And then now, once that's all done, you can then, you have your original PDF here. I have the new mock-up sitting right here. Open this up in Acrobat. You have this in here. You can go into and hit combine files. I click this. I'm going to add the ones that are already open. So it's here. You can separate them out. And then it's really just drag and drop. I'm going to pull this in. So now this is here. I can have it in between them. I can have it in the front. You know, whatever it is that you want to do. So then you have this all sitting here. Once you have your other mood board, so I have, let's just throw this in there, right? So I have my 4, I have my mood board, I have my mock-up. You then hit combine. It's going to pull all the pieces together. And then you can see now it's one PDF with the 4 different files. Then you simply go up and you go save as, because right now it's just saved as a binder. And then that's it. That's the file that you will upload before Monday's class. All right, so hopefully this helps anyone who is struggling that may have had questions on how that works. But yeah, if you have any other questions after this, please reach out. I'll try and get back to you as quickly as I can. Everyone else, have an excellent weekend, and I will see you on Monday.